Hello, and welcome to the Volleycast. I am your host, Joe Trinzi. Just got a quick solo episode today. We spent a lot of time earlier today with the webinar, Tom Black webinar, and it went really well. It was kind of a big test for me of the Zoom webinar tools that I've been checking out, and gotta say, was really happy when my experience as a technical coordinator, video analyst, stats guy, etc. Uh, I'm always a little leery of when you put a new technology to the test. And, I learned pretty quickly during my time at USA to get in the room a half hour early and make sure the projector is set up, because inevitably when you're by yourself, the video runs smoothly 3 times. And then as soon as you get the team in the room, all of a sudden something breaks. So have a backup for the backup and test beforehand, etc. We did that with the webinar tool, so I was pretty sure things were going to run smoothly. And actually, I've been recording these podcasts and all off that. But this was the first time we had like really a whole audience in there, and was getting questions from people and running video and annotating it. And I got to say, I have no affiliation with Zoom or anything, and there's probably some other good webinar tools, but I was really, really pleased with how easy it was to do. I could just roll the video, and Tom was talking about what he was seeing, and I was getting questions in the little chat box from the attendees, and I could annotate the video and draw lines and do all that kind of stuff. And it went really well. So any of you who are looking to do some distance learning with your teams here, I think that Zoom might be a good tool. There's probably others that work well, but I haven't tried them yet. So that went really well. We've been talking about that webinar on this podcast this week, and it was really good. We just had a small group of coaches. We kept the spots limited so that everybody could participate, and coaches were asking a ton of questions. It was really good. That was the college coaches only webinar. So keeping that to that. A bunch of people have asked me who weren't able to attend, or if we were going to record it and put it up, and we will. So check out for that on the Scout VB website, scoutvb.com, and you can go into the shop there, and we'll put a recording of that up for sale if anybody wants to check that out. And we'll be doing more of these webinars. So we already got good feedback from the attendees, and Tom liked doing it. I think pretty easy for him, and it was kind of 2 hours of pretty rapid fire analysis of his side out offense and fielding a lot of questions. So be looking to get more, bring in some more of my coaching contacts. Fortunately, I've been able to meet and interact with a lot of really good coaches, so we'll get more of them up. And from the indoor side, also probably putting one on maybe that has to do with more of statistics, analytics, et cetera, because that's a great time that we're all doing now, looking back and analyzing our seasons and, doing that. So maybe I'll use some of my contacts to get another top, somebody on the sort of analytical end, and we can do a webinar on that. And then also locking in something for the beach players. So I don't want to say any names yet. I'm working on getting a couple of those together. I'm hoping to maybe announce it as soon as tomorrow, like as soon as Monday, but maybe Tuesday, when I can just lock in the dates and times of when some of these coaches are available and can get on and clear a 2-hour block to participate in the webinar and do the questions. So keep looking for the Volleycast on Twitter, and we'll post those up, or keep looking on Scout VB, or just send me an email. It's joetrinzi@gmail.com. So just get in touch with me if you're interested in more of these webinars. But in addition to like that advertisement here, there was kind of a cool concept that kept coming up in this webinar that I thought was worth sharing for a little solo episode. And Tom was talking about, hey, okay, in this rotation, what do you like to run with your middle, or like do you run with your outside or opposite, and what's your play calls in this rotation or that rotation? And we went into a lot of that stuff, but one thing that he said a few times was your fundamentals dictate your tactics. And this is just a huge concept. I think that we understand it as coaches as it relates to something like side-out offense. If you can't pass, obviously your offensive options get real limited. I think we know that as coaches. And even with something like your passing target, to some degree that's dictated by your passing fundamentals. I think that we know that a better team can try to pass a little more precisely A less skilled team has to be a little more cautious with their passing target and make sure they keep the ball on their side of the net. There was this thread on Volley Talk that I was reading about, your passing target and where it should be. And, I posted something in there like, I'm not sure that where the coach sets the passing target in even has that much of an effect for most teams. Because, you get, hey, should we pass the ball 2 feet off the net or 3 feet off the net or 4 feet off the net? And I think like, hey, this team that I'm looking at right now, and a lot of teams that I end up working with, especially in the high school and juniors, man, you don't have a 1 foot margin of error that you're working with that passer. And it's like, if they keep the ball in the court, it's a good pass, So sometimes as coaches, we like, oh, is it going to be here? Is it going to be here? And it's like your player's variance is 10 times that size. So, it's sometimes working on the fundamentals. At that point, if your fundamentals are solid, then the tactics get a lot easier. And clearly the setter's ability, how consistent they can be with their location dictates what you're going to be running. For example, with middle hitters, we see basic, at lower levels, your middle hitting tactics are way more limited because the setting location is more variable. And we see the highest level middles, we see a lot of intricacies where they're doing these step ins or these jump aways because the setter can really locate it and have a difference between putting on the middle's right arm, between hitting on the middle's left arm to set up a cross body, something like that. So that's fundamentals opening up tactics. Your defensive, your block defense. Something like sometimes it's your fundamental skills and sometimes it's your physicality. You have a smaller right side blocker, for example, he or she may not have the option to stay in and help on the quick and then get out to block the outside. They may just have to leave and go block the outside because they physically can't do it. So then your tactics are limited by the fundamentals and the mechanic skills of your players, and it also could be physical or it could be mental. Your players, do they have the mental fundamentals, understanding the game, ability to process the game, ability to read a situation? Because you may want to have this defensive plan that's, hey, when they're in system, we're going to be here. And then when they get out of system, we're going to take 2 steps this way or take 2 steps back or whatever it is like that. And if you don't have that sound game recognition fundamental built in, you as a coach, you might see the situation where that adjustment is appropriate, but your players aren't seeing it. So it's physical fundamentals, it's the mental fundamentals of the game enabling it. And it's not just volleyball execution. That's also what it made me think about this when I was thinking about this idea of like fundamentals dictating tactics. You as a coach, what's your interpersonnel fundamentals? If you don't understand your players and if you haven't built a relationship at the fundamental levels where you get them, you understand them as people, and they understand what your motives are, you don't have a lot of room to maneuver tactically, in terms of your relationship with that player. Like, if you haven't built that foundation of trust, for example, then, you're not going to be able to get up and challenge them in the middle of practice. And maybe, because that's a tactic, that's sort of an emotional or a psychological tactic that coaches can use when they have built those fundamental layers of that relationship with the player. Or, for example, if you've done the groundwork from a relationship aspect with your team and build trust, you can pull one of your leaders aside and say, hey, what's going on with these 2 other players? I noticed that, they're getting in a little bit and their performance has been down on. If you've built that relationship with them, that's a tactic where you may, that your captain may be able to say, oh, well, here's what's going on with those 2 players. And they'll give you the scoop, and then you can use that to adjust how you deal with those players. But if you haven't built that at the fundamental level, then you're probably just going to, they're going to give you like a little vague story and you'll never really know. So the interpersonal fundamentals give you these additional tactics that you can use when you need them. And even something like as a coaching end, what are your admin fundamentals like? Are you easy to deal with from other people in your department, whether it's your athletic directors, whether it's your facilities people, whether it's your other other coaches of other sports or strength and conditioning staff. Are you organized, or are you changing the schedule at the last second constantly? you know um, are you getting all your paperwork done? Are you submitting all your hours? Are you doing all these kind of stuff? Like, if you're taking care of those fundamentals from the admin end, then when you go to your strength and conditioning staff and you want to rearrange the schedule, or you want to get some a little more personal attention, or this or that, for your players, they're going to work with you more because you're taking care of the fundamentals for their perspective. Or you go to your higher up administration and you've been easy to deal with. You haven't been getting any problems. You've been dealing with, making do with, the, little hiccups here or there that occur with almost every program. And you've been easy to deal with and taking care of everything on your end. Then when you need to go to your admin and say, hey, we want to have this schedule, this out of conference trip that, normally we want to do, and maybe it costs a little bit more, requires a little bit more maneuvering, then they'll back you up on that. Or, hey, you want to work out a little more favorable gym time, and, or some schedule like that. So if you're taking care of the fundamentals on the admin end, then gives you a little more room to maneuver on some of these other things. So that was kind of a major theme of this webinar, was how some of these fundamentals, and Tom's just got this great eye for the fundamentals and for the technical side, and with some of the footwork and stuff like that. And that's what he was pointing out. Okay, this fundamental piece of footwork or movement is enabling us to run this play or get this tempo going or have these options. And maybe think of that for volleyball, obviously, but then some of these other things that are involved in coaching, how your fundamentals dictate and enable your tactics. Okay, so that's the thought for today. If you want to check out or buy that webinar, go on Scout VB and stay posted, definitely, because I thought this webinar went really smooth and got some great feedback. So we'll be running some more of these. So check out Twitter at the Volleycast, or just stay tuned on the podcast, or shoot me an email, and we'll let you know about all this stuff. All right.